You got this.
Alright, today I'm going to be refuting that animal testing is bad for cosmetic use. And this subject is not really along my line of work usually. I did a bunch of research on this and come to find that as much as I don't agree with the animals really being hurt, that it is pretty necessary in order for it to protect humans. And would you rather have a human being with a genetic disease or a mutation or an animal that only has a lifespan of under a year? So with this cause and effect and the weighing out your options, that it seems to be that it's more effective to be doing animal testing with these cosmetic products on animals instead of human beings. I don't agree with that the animals being hurt, but it's been going on for such a long time. It started back in over 500 BC, which is a really, really long time ago. And it's been helping save humans from deathly injury and viruses and all kinds of stuff, not just for cosmetic use, but for vaccines and all kinds of different things. So I'm going to be refuting the fact that animal testing fails to protect consumers. Animals are just exposed to toxic substances, alternatives to animal testing, and come up with a few different examples for each of them. So it's hard to find stats on this kind of subject because it's such an unmonitored and regulated thing with these animals that are just kind of discarded. Unless it's published in public research, then nothing is ever recorded stat-wise about it. So it's not required for any product to prove that the product is safe by testing it on animals in the United States. So you don't necessarily have to do this process unless you really believe that you're going to introduce a new chemical or a substance that might be deadly or harm humans. The only country that does really necessarily require this is China, which we all know is a little strict on everything. So my first point being is that with animal testing, how it fails to protect the consumers, how it really could be beneficial for consumers, and how it could be a positive. But the information I got from prosandcons.org, it talks about how important it is for human health that we get these products tested on animals. Not all of them, but the ones that need to. They say that American women use approximately 12 personal care items per day, which is a lot if you ask me, but mice are actually genetically similar with humans, about 98%. So they're really, really close when it comes to doing the testing on these animals. And then out of the thousands and millions or whatever of animals, it's probably, I think it was 95% of mice and rats are the ones actually being tested. So it's not as many monkeys and dogs or rabbits as you'd think. It's more of mice and rats laboratory species to be able to work on genetic mutation stuff, growing, taking cow cells and injecting them into mice and being able to grow amputee parts and ears and things like that. So the U.S. Food and Drug Administration endorses the safety of these products by testing them. So you're able to basically have support from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration if you do it, but it's not necessarily required to prove that it's safe. It's not as violent and as cruel as it was previously explained by the treatments being regulated and needing to be and constantly being amended and improved, not only for the animal's sake, but for testing's sake. In Europe, they've already banned this animal testing, so it's no longer even allowed in that country. So the issue in Europe has already been dismissed. The next topic is that animals are exposed to toxic substances. As there's strict regulations for this, not only for human health, but for animal health. If the animals aren't being regulated and taken care of, then the animals that they're testing on are going to undergo a lot of stress, and basically the test will be null and void. It won't be worth anything. This information was brought by animalrights.com, and they also talked about how the Animal Welfare Act was established in 1966. It basically establishes minimum care standards for housing, sanitation, nutrition, water, veterinarian care, protects animals and livestock from extreme weather and temperatures. And it also protects any live or dead dog, cat, monkey, guinea pig, hamster, rabbit, warm-blooded animal, or pet. So basically anything that we really cherish is all protected under that same amendment. Also, if it's determined for the use of research or testing or experimental use or exhibition purposes. All of those animals are excluded from the kind of lab testing unless it's sanctioned by the secretaries. There's also, in the last section, no alternatives to animal testing. Now, this is not really a claim. It's the fact that there is no alternative for complete living organisms. So if you go ahead and try and test with like fat cells or skin cells and things like that, you're not going to get the same results and stuff because the human body is so complex. No matter how smart the supercomputer or anything like that, we're not going to be able to study the nervous systems and all the other respiratory systems and organs and stuff like that that'll be affected, as well as the side effects and brain activity. So by basically doing animal testing and checking on these animals how safe this product is, or a new chemical or product, that we're able to see if it's going to produce genetic mutations or things that could possibly harm human health. So as much as it sounds bad and it could be wrong, there's a reason it's been going on for so long. So that is my point today. I hope you agree. Thanks.
All right, Kyle, there's not really much analysis of the advocate's argument here. Just the general concept of animal testing is discussed. I didn't hear any particular references to the evidence or the reasoning that the advocate used, whether or not you thought it was sound or you could reach a valid conclusion based on what was presented by the advocate. I think there's a little bit of conflating the animal testing of cosmetics with animal research for medical products and devices in some of your responses. And there probably is a little bit of overlap, but I'm not sure that everything that you're talking about fits into the category that the advocate is talking about, especially since you yourself mentioned that Europe's already gotten rid of these things. Well, if Europe's gotten rid of these things, they apparently have found that it's not necessary in order to protect people for their cosmetics, and I can't imagine that the Europeans use fewer cosmetics than Americans do. You know, I would imagine if there was a comparison, if the average American woman is using 12 items a day, I'm sure the average European woman, wants to be even more beautiful and attractive and smell good and all that kind of stuff. She's using 13 or 14 items a day. But if they manage to do it without using stuff that's been tested on animals, then the question becomes, how is it necessary? And you don't have any examples of how it's necessary, any products that they discovered were unsafe because they tested them on animals, anything that slipped through in that situation. You mentioned the Animal Welfare Act, for instance, and that's kind of an interesting conundrum because earlier you said, well, there's no information on this, it's difficult because it's largely unregulated, and down below you're telling us, well, it's regulated by the Animal Welfare Act, and we've got these requirements and rules that they have to follow. I think that's an inconsistency. I think that there may be a lack of regulation in the kinds of animals that they use for cosmetic testing, but not necessarily on the kinds they use for medical testing, and I'm not positive about this. I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm 90% certain that the Animal Welfare Act excludes mice, rats, and birds.
Yeah, and amphibians.
Yeah, and amphibians, which you just said was 95% of the research that's going on. So in other words, 95% of the stuff that we're worried about, that's all that research is being done on mice and rats, that's not regulated by the Animal Welfare Act. So why is your argument useful there? Unless and one of the things you could point out is that the advocate didn't show anything other than, my memory is not great, but it seemed like it was rabbits was the main thing that she was talking about. I don't remember if there were other animals that were used in this process that was problematic or harmful, and you don't really have a response to that kind of issue, except we've been doing it a long time. And you know what? I think there's an argument there that says the reason we've done it a long time is to make sure that things are safe for people. We want to make as few mistakes as possible, and it's been largely successful. You don't know about a bunch of women who've been blinded by their mascara because it was tested on rabbits before they did that. We don't have anybody who's having allergic reactions to perfume because it's been tested on the skin of mice before it's been sold to human beings. We're not having those kinds of issues. There aren't millions of people suing companies for these problems because those problems have been prevented before they get to marketplace. That's the kind of argument that you need to be making there. So I thought you found some random ideas that apply, but they mostly apply to general medical research as opposed to particular stuff on cosmetic research. The one thing that you found that's specific about cosmetic research seems to help the advocate's position, and that's that that European countries have banned the use of products or the use of this kind of testing. So, I think that undermines your argument a little bit. You tried to present it pretty effectively. I think you spoke to the audience well. And like I said, I think you needed a lot more analysis of the advocate's argument. I think that might be where there's some substance to talk about, that the advocate didn't provide adequate evidence, or the examples that they provided were unique or unusual, or there's something that's been ignored, or there's other information about the cosmetics industry that would work. Thank you.